Hello and welcome to the next two chapters from Goodnight Mister Tom by Michelle Magorian. These are chapters 15 and 16 and the content in chapter 16 especially, and at the end of chapter 15 is especially really not. This is a children's book, but it's not really suitable for children in my opinion. And I don't make my videos suitable for children, but I don't put the age restriction on that prevents a child from watching. So if they want to watch it, they can. So, chapter 15 is Home, and this is the chapter where William is sent back to London. Dobbs clopped on towards Weirwold, Tom and Willie sitting on the cart behind her. They hadn't exchanged many words on the journey. They had both felt too numb. Willie held Sammy tightly next to him and stared through blurred eyes down at the leather and brass harness, the moving flank of Dobbs and the rough road beneath them. Occasionally he lifted his head to gaze at the fields, only to look quickly downwards again. Tom kept his eyes on the road. The blacksmiths at the edge of the village could be seen faintly in the distance. He had tried persuading Willie's mother to come and stay in Little Weirwold, but to no avail. She had written that she only wanted Willie to stay with her for a while till she felt better. He had spoken to the billeting officer, but there was nothing she could do. Mothers were always taking their children back, and they had the legal right to do so. They left Dobbs and the cart at the blacksmith's. Tom helped Willie on with his old rucksack. It was filled with books, clothes and presents he had acquired during his stay. In the carrier bag that he had carried on his first day were his original possessions. Willie trembled. A blast of wind swept into his face and he shivered. Tom squeezed his shoulder firmly and walked with him towards the railway station, holding Sammy on a makeshift lead. They sat on a bench on the platform and gazed at the hedgerows on the other side of the railway tracks. "Don't forget to write, William," said Tom huskily, and with shaking hands he took his pipe out of his pocket and began to fill it. "No, Mr. Tom." "If you changes your mind about them paints, you just let on, and I'll post them." Willie shook his head. "They belongs at home. I mean, at your place. Then they'll be there when I come back. I will come back," he added, earnestly touching Tom's hand. "I will, won't I?" "You might feel different when you're home. I expect your mother's missed you. Probably why she didn't write much. And William." "Yeah?" "Don't expect too much too soon. You ain't seen each other for nearly 6 months, so things might be a little awkward like for a while." Willie nodded. A cloud of smoke drifted upwards from a clump of trees in the distance. They watched it getting nearer and heard the sound of the approaching train growing louder. They stood up and Mr. Tom picked Sammy up in his arms. "Now you takes care of yourself, boy. You keeps up that old drawing. You've a fine gift. If you runs out of pencils, you let me know." Willie nodded and his eyes became misty. He blinked. Tears fell down his cheeks. He gave a sniff and brushed them quickly away. "Ta," he said. Tom swallowed a lump in his throat. "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you," said Willie. Tom nodded. "Me too." They watched the train drawing into the station. A crowd of soldiers and sailors were hanging out of the windows. Tom opened a door. One of the soldiers, a young lad of 18, caught sight of the anxious look in Tom's eyes, and he helped Willie on board. "Dinna ye fret, sir," he said. "We'll find him a seat all right." Tom nodded his thanks and clasped Willie's shoulder as he hung dejectedly out of the door window. The whistle blew. They choked out their goodbyes, waving to each other till the train and platform were out of each other's sight. "Here you are," said the young soldier. He had persuaded another soldier to let Willie squeeze into a place by the window. Will that do ye, lad?" Willie nodded, relieved that he could stare out of the window. He didn't want anyone to see his face. He placed his rucksack onto his knees and hung onto it grimly. At first the soldier left him alone, but later decided to try and cheer him up. "What's your name, then?" "William Beach." "Where you going?" "London." "I thought your barns were being moved out," he said. "You miss home then, do you?" He shrugged. "That old man your grandad?" "No," he answered, looking up. "He's Mr. Tom." "Is he now?" Willie's lips quivered. The soldier paused, sensing that this was not the best subject to talk to the boy about. "Who are you staying with in London, then?" "Me mum." "Oh, you'll be glad to see her, then. Your dad called up, then, is he?" "I ain't got no dad." "Oh, sorry about that." He paused again. "Tell me about your ma. What's she like?" Willie was puzzled. What was she like? At the moment she was just a dim memory. She had dark hair, he remembered that much. "She's got dark hair and—" He thought again. "She's medium size." "Eyes?" "Beg pardon?" "Eyes. What colour eyes has she?" Willie didn't ever remember clearly looking at her eyes, but he couldn't tell him that. He must think of something to say. "Mixed, are they?" He nodded. "Does she sing a lot?" Willie shook his head. The thought of his mother singing, except in church, was too shocking to contemplate. They looked at each other silently for a moment. "What's in them bags, then?" "Clothes and presents, books." "You like reading, then?" Willie nodded. "I've not got the patience myself." "And drawing?" "What?" said the soldier. "I draw like." "Oh," he said, and he saw by the sudden brightness in Willie's eyes and his smile that this would be a good subject to talk about. "You have any on you, then?" "Yeah, I'd like to see them if that is you're willing." Willie nodded shyly and opened his rucksack. He pulled out one of 3 sketch pads from the back and handed it to him. The soldier opened it. "Oh," he cried in surprise, "he can really draw. Oh, these are good. These are really good. Your mother must be terrible proud of you," he added, handing the pad back to him. "She ain't seen them yet." "Well, when she does, she will be." "Do you think so?" "I know so." Willie eased the sketch pad back into his rucksack. He caught sight of the acting book that Zack had given him, and the gobstoppers that George had produced suddenly when he had said goodbye. He didn't want to look at them now. He flicked over the top of the rucksack and did the straps up. Would his mother be proud of him? He thought. He began to fantasize around her. Only her face was very vague. She became a mixture of Mrs. Fletcher and Mrs. Hartridge. He imagined her waiting on the platform for him. He would wave out the window and she would wave back, smiling and laughing. And when he stepped out of the train, he would run up to her and she to him, and they would embrace. He stopped. He remembered that she was supposed to be ill. Perhaps she would be too ill to fetch him. She might even be dying, and instead of her there would be a warden or a vicar to meet him, and he would be taken to her bedside, and she would touch him gently, and say how much she loved him and how proud she was of him. He leaned back and closed his eyes. He felt tired. The strain of all the goodbyes had exhausted him. He wondered what Zack was doing. He had written the first 2 verses of another epic poem specially for him. He had it in his pocket. He said that he'd finish it and send it to him in the post or by pigeon. The train chugged and crawled towards London, and Willie soon fell into a sleep that was filled with a multitude of strange dreams. He felt someone shaking him to consciousness. "Hey, sleepyhead! Wake up, lad! This is London. We're in London. Wake up!" He opened his eyes, expecting to see the light from his bedroom window and Mr. Tom looking through the trapdoor, but he saw only the young Scots boy leaning over him against a vague background of khaki and shouting. He swung the rucksack over his shoulder and lifted the carrier bag. His legs felt wobbly and his clothes smelt of tobacco. As he stepped outside, the cold night air hit him sharply. He buttoned up his overcoat, pulled his balaclava up over his head and put on his gloves. He looked around the platform, which was swarming with soldiers, but there was no sign of his mother anywhere. A large sergeant stopped and looked down at him. "Run away, has you?" he boomed in a bone-rattling voice. "You'd best see the ticket man, my lad." "I ain't run away, sir," he blurted out. "You tell that to the ticket man." The ticket man was a middle-aged man with a drooping moustache. He took one look at Willie and gave a weary sigh. "Another one, eh? Don't you lads know it's safer in the country?" And he tweaked Willie's ear through the balaclava. "I suppose you've no ticket. Now let's take down your address." Willie pulled a ticket out of his pocket and showed it to him. "Oh," he said. "Oh." "I'm visiting my mum, like she's ill." "Ah," he said. "Ah, I see. Well, and where is she then? Is she picking you up, or a warden picking you up, or what?" "I dunno." The ticket man hummed significantly and looked at the sergeant. "I think I can handle this all right, sir. Thanks for your help." The sergeant touched his beret and disappeared among the soldiers. "I think we'd best find a warden, my boy." Willie looked frantically round the station. "Wait, there she is," he said, pointing to a thin, gaunt woman standing next to a pile of sandbags. He waved and yelled out to her, but she stared vacantly around, neither seeing nor hearing him. "She don't seem to know you, do she? I think you'd best wait here for a while." "I'll talk to her," he said. "Oh, no, you don't," said the ticket man, grabbing his arm, and then he changed his mind. "Oh, go on with you." Willie ran over to her. "Mum," he cried. "Mum!" "Go away," she said sternly. "You won't get no money from me." "Mum," he repeated. "It's me." She glanced down and was about to tell him to clear off when she recognised him. Yes, it was Willie, but he had altered so much. She had been looking for a thin little boy dressed in grey. Here stood an upright, well-fleshed boy in sturdy ankle boots, thick woollen socks, a green rolled-top jersey, and a navy blue coat and balaclava. His hair stuck out in a shiny mass above his forehead, and his cheeks were round and pink. It was a great shock to her. "I'm awfully pleased to see you, Mum. I've such a lot to tell you, and there's me pictures like." She was startled at his peculiar mixture of accents. She had expected him to be more subservient, but even his voice sounded louder. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm not very well, you see, and I'm a bit tired. I wasn't expecting such a change in you." Willie was puzzled. He thought that it was his mother that had changed. He had learnt new things, that was true, but he was still him. He studied her face. She was very pale, almost yellow in colour, and her lips were so blue that it seemed as if every ounce of blood had been drained from them. The lines by her thin mouth curved downwards. He glanced at her body. She was wearing a long black coat, fawn stockings, and smart lace-up heel shoes. A small shopping bag was now leaning against her leg. He touched her arm gently. "I'll carry that for you, Mum," he said, picking it up. She spun round and gave his hand a hard slap. "I'll tell you what I wants, when I wants, and you know I don't approve of touching." "Sorry," he muttered. They stood silently and awkwardly as the large, noisy station roared around them. Willie felt his heart sinking, and the spark of hope that he had held was fast dissolving. But then he remembered. Mr. Tom had said that they would feel awkward at first, and that it would take time to get used to each other. Mrs. Beach, meanwhile, surveyed her small son, her mind racing. She'd be lenient with him for the moment. After all, it was his first evening back, and he had a lot to learn before accepting his manly responsibilities. "Let's go for a cup of tea," she said at last. "You can take my bag." "Thanks, Mum," and he smiled. She stepped sharply backwards, horrified. She couldn't remember ever having seen him smile before. She had hoped that he had remained a serious child. The smile frightened her. It threatened her authority. She swallowed her feelings and stepped forward again, handing him her bag. Everything was going to be fine, thought Willie. He followed her down a tiny back alley to a small cafe. They sat near the door. "You look more filled out," said his mother. "Fed you well, did he, that Mr. Oakley?" Willie sipped his tea. It wasn't as good as Mr. Tom's, but it was hot, and that was what mattered. "Yes, he did." She pointed to his rucksack on the floor. "Where'd you get that from?" "Mr. Tom." "Oh, and who's he?" "Mr. Oakley. He gave it me to carry the presents." One of her hands was outstretched across the table. He went to touch it, but quickly changed his mind. There's a present for you too." "I don't need charity, thank you," she said, pursing her lips. "You know that." "It ain't charity. It's for you getting well. Mrs. Thatcher made you some bed socks. Pink they are, real soft. And Lucy's mum and dad put in eggs and butter." "Butter?" "Yeah, and Mrs. Fletcher made a fruit cake. She says she knows you might not feel like eating it now, but it'll keep for when you do." He was talking an awful lot, she thought. She'd never seen him like this before. Too cheeky by far. She'd soon discipline it out of him. "And Aunt Nance, Mrs. Little, has sent a bottle of tonic wine." Mrs. Beach turned puce. "Wine?" she said angrily. She checked herself and lowered her voice. "Wine?" she repeated. "Haven't I told you about the evils of drink? Have you been drinking then? Who is this debauched woman?" "It ain't like what you buy in a pub, Mum. I asked. She says it's got iron in it. It'll help you get your strength back. Mr. Little's a real doctor, Mum, and she's his wife." "What kind of doctor?" she asked suspiciously. He shrugged. "One who helps people get better. I was scared of him at first, but I ain't now." "Then he can't be a real doctor." "He is, Mum." Mrs. Beach was stunned. Her son had answered her back. He'd actually disagreed with her. "Are you arguing with me?" "No, Mum. I was just... Stop putting on that way of talking." "What way, Mum?" "Wipe that innocent look off your face." "I don't understand," he started. "You haven't changed, have you? I thought that man would frighten some goodness into you, but it seems he hasn't." She suddenly grew anxious, and a cold panic flooded her limbs. "He was a churchman, wasn't he?" "Yes, Mum. He took care of it and the graveyard. I told you in my letters." "Oh, yes, your letters. Now, Willie, I thought you'd grown out of lying." "I ain't lying." "Stop talking like that." He felt bewildered. Like what, he thought. "That writing was not yours. I know that. That's why I didn't bother to answer. But I learnt at the school, and Mr. Tom and Miss Fawn helped me." "My, you do seem to have taken up a lot of people's time. They must be glad to see the back of you." "No, Mum, they ain't." "They..." He hesitated. They what?" "They like me." It felt so good to say that. "That's show, Willie. You're an evacuee, and they were just being polite." "No, Mum." "You are committing the sin of pride, Willie, and you know what happens to people who commit the sin of pride." Willie was growing more and more confused. It was as if he was drifting into some bad dream. Mrs. Beach tapped the table gently. "That's enough for now, Willie. We don't want to quarrel on our first night, do we?" He shook his head. Willie. That was the other thing that felt strange to him. Nobody had called him that for 6 months. Will felt comfortable, and even his full name William sounded fine, although he had always felt like a Willie inside. Suddenly, now, when his mother referred to him as Willie, it was as though she was talking to someone else. He felt like two people. He knew she wouldn't accept the Will side of him, only the Willie, and he didn't feel real when she called him that. She leaned towards him. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you, Willie." And she forced a smile which, for some reason, alarmed him, seeing the shape of it under those dead, colourless eyes. "It's a little surprise only," she added. "We have to creep into the house. No one must see you. It's..." She hesitated. It's like a game. And she immediately felt relieved at having thought of the idea. No one must see me? No. Why? She frowned and then put on the smile again. You'll see. It's a surprise. It'll be sport if I tell you. He nodded. He didn't really feel sick in his stomach. He was just imagining it, wasn't he? It was her that was ill, not him. And then you can show me your cake and presents. Yeah, he said, visibly brightening. I can show you my pictures. She waved him to stop. She didn't want him talking again. Yes, of course, but right now I've got a headache. It can wait, can't it? They left the cafe and caught a bus. The windows of the bus were covered in what looked like chicken netting. Why is that there? He asked. It's rude to ask questions, and it's rude to point. Behave yourself, she whispered. Miss London Tan, did you, love? Said the bus conductress as she took their fares. It was the first woman Willie had ever seen working on a bus. Boring in the country, so I hear. All them cars. Still, you know, it's safer there. And she winked at his mother. You miss them, though, don't you, love? She nodded, put her arms stiffly round Willie's shoulder and switched on the smile. Yes, and he's all I've got. Don't tell me. 5 of me own. I've given up sending them off. It don't seem worth it, do it, really? Nothing much happening. Hardly seems as if there's a war on at all, do it? No. Willie shivered at the iciness of his mother's rigid body. Having her arm round him made him feel nauseous. His own mother made him feel ill. Perhaps he really was wicked after all. The bus crawled along slowly in the blackout until at last they reached Deptford. They stepped off and the conductress yelled, "Good night," to them. Mrs. Beach led Willie round the back of their street. She told him to hide in an alleyway and watch their front door. As soon as she had opened it and coughed, he was to run in. It was a strange game, thought Willie. He slid his hand into his shorts pocket and felt Zach's poem. It helped him feel less unreal. He had not been standing long when he heard the cough. Picking up the rucksack and bags, he dragged them across the pavement. His mother whispered angrily to him to hurry up. She was frightened. She didn't want anyone in the street to know that he was back. He stumbled into the front room, which was still in darkness. There was a strong, dank smell coming from somewhere. It was as if an animal had opened its bowels or peed somewhere. "Is it a dog?" he asked. "Is what a dog?" "The surprise." "What surprise?" "Oh, that! No, it's not a dog." She turned the light on. The room was darker than Willie had remembered. He stared up at the grey walls. There were 2 prayer books on the mantelpiece, and one on the sideboard still in the same position. In addition to the newspaper over the windows, it was also crisscrossed with brown tape. "What's that for?" he asked. "What have I said about asking questions?" she shouted, slamming her hand angrily on the table. "Don't," said Willie, startled. "Are you telling me not to?" "No," interrupted Willie. "I meant don't ask questions. That's what you say. You say I mustn't ask questions. And don't interrupt me when I'm speaking." They stood yet again, another awkward silence between them. Willie turned away from her, and then he saw it. A wooden box on a chair in the corner. He was about to ask what it was, but changed his mind, walked over to it, and looked inside. "That's the surprise," she said. He put his hand inside. "A baby," he whispered. "But why?" He stopped and turned. "It's got tape on its mouth." "I know that. I didn't want it to make a noise while I was out. It's a secret, you see." "Is it?" He hesitated. "Is it yours? Ours? A present?" "Yes." "Who from?" "Jesus." He glanced down at the baby. She was very smelly. She opened her eyes and began to cry. "I'll pick her up," he said, leaning towards her. "Don't you dare." "But she's crying." "She's just trying to get attention. She must learn a little discipline." But he stammered. "He's only a baby." "Sit down," she yelled. "Immediately." Willie sat at the table. "Has she a name?" She brought her fist down hard on the table. "No." And that's enough questions from you, or you'll feel the belt round you. Willie flushed. The belt? It was still at Mr. Tom's. He'd keep his mouth shut. Maybe she'd forget. Now let's see what you've got in those bags, and take that coat off. He hung it on the back of the chair, stuffing his balaclava and gloves into the pockets. He emptied the carrier bag first. He took out his old plimsolls with the tops cut off. They got too small, he explained, and placed his thin grey jersey, shorts, cap, mackintosh and Bible on the table beside them. I see you've still got your Bible, she said. You've been keeping up with it, I hope, and learning it. Yes, Mum. She leant back in her chair. Recite Exodus chapter 1, verses 1 to 6. Willie stared at her blankly. I don't learn them by rote, Mum. I learns the stories, like. I can tell you lots of stories, Old and New Testament. I'm not interested in stories. You learnt by rote before you left here. Well, that's because I listened to the others say it in Sunday school, he explained. We didn't. Undo that other bag. He unfastened the straps of the rucksack and slowly began to pull everything out. It felt as though he was stripping naked in front of her. All the things that were precious and important to him were now being placed under her scrutiny. She sat ashen-faced and watched him unpack. When he had finished, she spoke in a quiet and controlled manner. Now, I'll ask the questions, and you'll give me the answers and no back chat. Where did you get them clothes and boots you're wearing? Mr. Oakley and Mrs. Fletcher. You steal them? No, they were presents. You begged? No, I never. Don't argue. I said you begged. He took hold of the eggs, fruitcake, wine and bed socks and slid them across to her. Those are your presents, he said. You begged those too, I suppose? No. I've got a present of my own for you, he added. It seemed spoilt now. His surprise. It had been Mr. Tom's idea. He picked up 2 pieces of cardboard that were strung neatly together and untied them. Inside was a drawing. It was of the graveyard and the church with fields and trees in the background. He passed it to her. It's where I lived. She looked at it. You steal this? No. Now she would be pleased with him, he thought. No, I drew it myself. She looked at him coldly. Don't lie to me. I'm not. I did it myself. Look. And he grabbed a sketch pad that was full of drawings. These are mine too, he said, flicking over the first page. I haven't time to look at pictures, Willie. But I did them myself, he cried. Please look at them. Willie, you've got a lot to learn. I shall either burn these or give them to charity. I only hope that no one ever finds out what you've done. Willie stared at her in dismay. I didn't steal them, honest, Mum. I did them. I can show you. That's enough, she said, banging her fist on the table again. The situation was worse than she had ever imagined. It would take a lot of hard work to silence him into obedience. And these? She asked, indicating the books and sweets, coloured pencils and clothes. Presents, he mumbled. More presents, Willie? Do you expect me to believe that? Do you expect me to believe that strangers would give you presents? They ain't strangers, Mum. They're friends. Friends? I'd like to know who these so-called friends are. George and Zach. And the twins, and are they churchgoers? Oh, yes. George is in the choir. So am I. His face fell. Was. But Ginny and Carrie. Girls? Yes, the twins are girls. Carrie's working for. You play with girls? After all I've said about that, and you mix with girls? But they's fine and they goes to church. They all does, well, all except Zach. Jack? Who's he? Zach, he said. Short for... And he bit his lip. Some instinct told him that he was approaching dangerous ground. His ears buzzed and his mother's voice began to sound distant. Why doesn't he go to church? He heard her say. He tried to evade the question. He believes in God, Mum, and he knows his Bible real good. Well, why doesn't he go to church? They ain't got one of his sort in the village, see? And anyway, he faltered for a second, he thinks that there's more God in the fields and sky and in loving people than in churches and synagogues. In what? She asked. In fields and... He hesitated. And the sky. No. You said than in churches or what? What did you say? Synagogues, said Willie. That's what they call their churches. Who? Jews. Zach's Jewish. His mother let out a frightened scream. You've been poisoned by the devil. Don't you know that? And she rose and hit him savagely across the face. He put up his hands to defend himself, which only increased her anger. He reeled backwards in the chair and crashed onto the floor. But Zach says Jesus was a Jew. You blasphemer, she screamed. You blasphemer. Something heavy hit him across the head, and he sank into a cold darkness. He could still hear her screaming, and he knew that she was hitting him, but he felt numb and separated from himself. He had become two people, and one of his cells was hovering above him, watching what was happening to his body. He woke up with a jerk, shivering with the cold. He began to stretch his cramped legs, but they hurt. Opening his eyes, he looked around in the darkness. He knew immediately where he was. He had been locked under the stairs. He peered through the crack at the side of the small door. It was pitch black. His mother must have gone to bed. He shivered. His boots were gone, so were his jersey and shorts. He tugged at his waist and winced as he contacted a bruise. His vest had been sewn to his underpants. He took hold of the thin piece of material that lay under his body and wrapped it round himself. He could smell blood. He touched his head and discovered several painful lumps. His legs were sore and covered in something wet and congealed. The night before he had been lying in his first and only bed, in his first and only room. He was glad that he had left his paints and brushes there. Mr. Tom would take care of them. Mr. Tom. He had given him some stamped addressed envelopes so that he could send him letters. He had also sewn 2 half-crowns into his overcoat. Would they still be there? Or would his mother sell the coat together with his clothes? He thought of the baby with the tape over its mouth. Maybe if she did sell them, it would help the baby. He remembered the books and Zach's poem. She would certainly burn that, since it had Zach's name on it. He felt as though he was a different person lying there in the dark. He was no longer Willie. It was as if he had said goodbye to an old part of him. Neither was he 2 separate people. He was Will, inside and out. For an instant he wished he had never gone to Little Weirwold. Then he would have thought his mum was kind and loving. He wouldn't have known any different. A wave of despair swept through him, and he cursed his new awareness. He hadn't been used to this pain for a long time. He had softened. "Mr. Tom," he whispered in the darkness. "Mr. Tom, I want you, Mr. Tom." And he gave a quiet sob. His ankle hurt. He must have twisted it when he fell. He placed his hand round it. It was swollen and painful to touch. He let go of it and curled himself tightly into a frozen ball, praying that soon he would fall asleep. Chapter 16. The Search. The cottage seemed very quiet without William. Tom missed the sound of his boots clattering along the tiled hallway and his chatter at night. In the days that followed his departure, he found himself glancing at the table to share something he had read, only to realise that the chair where he usually sat was unoccupied. He felt the old, familiar emptiness that he had experienced after the sudden loss of Rachel. At least he could console himself that William was alive. He listened to the news on the wireless with extra attentiveness, particularly when there were reports of bombing near London. Hitler had by now invaded Norway and Denmark, and heavy units of the British fleet had been sent to help the invaded countries, but the war still left Little Weirwold unruffled except for those few who missed William. It was sad that he wasn't around to witness early spring. Already buttercups were appearing in the fields and in the woods. Wet primroses and violets had burst through the soggy, dark earth. Tom waited patiently for a letter. After the first week, when there was still no word from him, he thought William was probably too busy to write, for he would probably have his hands full doing chores for his mother. He thought the same the second week, but by the third week he began to feel anxious. He himself had written 4 letters. He knew that Zack had sent several also, but there was no reply to any of them. One night he awoke violently from a nightmare. In the dream he had been locked into a tiny space with no air inside. It was as though he was being buried alive, but it was the voice that had woken him. He thought he had heard William calling out to him for help. He woke with a jerk, only to find Sammy standing by his bedside panting. He staggered out of bed and fumbled his way towards the bedroom window. Carefully easing the blackout curtains to one side, he peered out. It was still dark. He opened the door, walked across the hallway to the living room, and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m, almost time for his fire duty anyway. He'd go and relieve Hubert Pullett early. He pulled his corduroy, thick jersey and boots on over his pyjamas and stepped outside into the damp night, slinging his trench coat, cap and gas mask on as he walked. Sammy followed him, dragging a bit of old blanket in his teeth. The firepost was a makeshift platform on top of the village hall, a ridiculous piece of extravagance Tom had thought when it was being built. He climbed up the ladder which leaned onto it. Mr. Pullett was sitting with a blanket wrapped round him and was in the process of falling asleep in a chair. He woke up, pleased to see Tom so early. They chatted for a while until Mr. Pullett decided to leave for the warmth of his bed. Tom made himself as comfortable and as warm as was possible, and Sammy snuggled in between his legs. As he stared at the sky, he couldn't rid himself of the dream he had just had. If William was in need of help, surely he would write to him. He gazed out at the galaxy of stars and brooded. 2 hours later, the dawn injected its colours into the sky, and Mrs. Butcher came and took his place. On the way home, he caught sight of Miss Fawn's sister May on her ancient bicycle. She was delivering the mail. He ran after her. "Nothing for you, I'm afraid," she said. "I'm sorry." She hesitated before moving off again. "Mr. Oakley," she added anxiously, "I'm afraid I have a telegram. It's for Annie Hartridge." He looked up, startled. The last telegram had brought the news of Michael Fletcher's death. "I'm a little worried," she went on, "what with her baby due so soon. I'd like to wait till the midwife is visiting before delivering it, but it's against regulations." Tom frowned thoughtfully. "You seen Mrs. Fletcher?" She shook her head. "Didn't like to disturb her." "I'll go and see her now. Suggest you might pop in to see her." "Thanks." He watched her wobble off and head towards the farming area on the south side of the village. Turning sharply back, he walked in the direction of the Fletcher's cottage. Mrs. Fletcher had just seen her husband and Edward off to work. The kitchen door was still open, and the light from it was casting a pale glow onto the still glistening garden. She was standing at the doorway. "You ain't on duty, is you?" she asked, glancing guiltily at the light. "No, I ain't," said Tom. "I just wanted to have a private word, like." "George and David are asleep." "They won't be bothering us. Come on in and have some tea. You was looking a little on the pale side." He stepped into the cosy warmth of the kitchen. Sam padded after him and curled up on the floor in front of her range. She sat down at the table and poured out 2 cups of tea. "Sit down," she said, sliding a cup across to him. "What can I do for you?" Tom looked surprised. There's something you wants me to do, ain't there?" "Is it, Will?" Tom shook his head. "Annie Hartridge has got a telegram." Mrs. Fletcher put down her cup slowly. "David?" she asked. "I don't know. I just thought with you having lost Michael, and with her about to have her baby, she might need someone who could help, like." "Of course," she said, and she stood up and hurriedly untied her apron. "She ain't got it yet," he added. She rolled down her sleeves. I'd like to be there as soon as possible. In her state she might pass out or something. I'll think of an excuse like extra eggs from the paddock fields, booties for the baby, that sort of thing. Tom nodded. It sounded for the best. He watched her put her coat on. Them trains to London, he murmured. Yes, she said, puzzled. What about them? They run on Fridays, don't they? Yes, that's right. It's Friday today, ain't it? Yes. He stood up abruptly. I'm going to get on that train, Mrs. Fletcher, and what's more, I'm going to get on it today. Tom's journey to London was as bumpy and intermittent as William's had been. Dim blue lights lit the tightly packed carriages and the air was stifling. It was frustrating, too, not to be able to see the stations that they passed, but once it was evening it was too dangerous to attempt to peep through the blacks, in spite of the faintness of the blue lights. Sammy, who had not only snuggled himself into the cart, but had also jumped off it and followed Tom to the station, was now squashed onto his lap. A makeshift lead made of rope hung from between his teeth. Tom, who had originally refused to allow Sammy to come with him, was now glad of his company. It was going to be a lonely task searching for William. It was 9 o'clock when the train pulled into London. He clambered out with Sammy and stood on the platform feeling totally dazed. The noise was deafening. Hundreds of uniformed figures swirled about him, shouting to each other. Another train pulled out, and a voice over a tannoy system was calling out platform numbers and destinations. It was a while before Tom could orientate himself enough to hand his ticket in. He must have looked a strange sight with his thick white hair and weather-beaten face, clad in an old cord cap, overcoat and country boots, with Sammy barking nervously at his ankles. Peering through the hordes of young men, he finally spotted the ticket man. He slung the haversack that he had borrowed onto his back. It was filled with clothes and food for William from people in the village. He handed his ticket in. The man looked down at Sammy. Should have a muzzle, that dog. Tom nodded, having no intention of ever getting one. Where you from? He continued. You ain't a Londoner? That I know. On holiday, are you? And he gave a loud chuckle at the absurdity of his remark. Tom looked at him blankly. Only a joke, muttered the man. Ain't you got no sense of humour? Where's Deputy Forrard? Asked Tom. Deputy Forrard? Imitated the man. Never heard of it. Say it again. Tom repeated it, and the man shrugged. Ern, he yelled to an ARP warden who was passing. You know where Deputy Forrard is? Not heard of it, said Ern, and I knows most places round London. Used to be a cabby. You got it written down? Tom handed them the piece of paper with the address written on it. Oh, you mean Deptford, they chorused. Tom repeated their pronunciation of it. Deptford, he said quietly to himself. They waved their arms over to the left towards an archway and directed him towards a bus station. Tom thanked them and headed in the direction they had suggested. The two men watched him and Sammy walk away. You don't half meet some queer uns here, said the ticket man. I hope he ain't a German spy. And they gave a loud laugh. Tom held on to Sammy's lead firmly, for in the unlit street he kept colliding into people. He finally got onto a bus that would take him part of the way to Deptford, but it was a painfully slow journey. He stared in amazement at the conductress in her manly uniform. She was a little irritated at first, and then realised that he was a stranger to the city. You one of them refugees? She asked kindly. No, he replied. I don't think so. Where you from then? Little Weirwold. She didn't understand him. His accent was too thick for her. In the country, is it? She shouted, thinking he might understand her better if she raised her voice. He nodded. What brings you to London? Come to see a little boy. Oh, grandson, is he? Tom nodded. He knew it was a lie, but he didn't want to go into complicated explanations. Sammy sat obediently on his lap. By the time Tom had changed buses and been directed and misdirected, it was midnight before he reached the area where Willie lived. Accustomed now to the darkness, he could make out only too clearly the awful living conditions. Small dilapidated tenements stood huddled together, all in desperate need of care and attention. So this was William's background, he thought. Suddenly a loud siren wailed across the sky. He froze. What was he supposed to do? He had read about communal shelters in the newspapers, and he knew that people often crowded into the tubes, but he had no idea where the nearest tube station was. "Come on, move on there," said a loud, brusque voice. "Move on to the shelter." A group of people brushed past him, grumbling and cursing. "Who's got the cards?" yelled a woman in the darkness. "Alf, have you got me bleeding cards?" A young girl bumped into him. "Here, mind where you're going, mister." She rebuked him sharply. "Sorry," he muttered. He shouted after her, "Where's you gone?" But she had run away. He felt a hand on his arm. It was a warden, a breezy man not more than 10 years younger than him. "You seem a little lost, sir. Come with me." Tom picked Sammy up in his arms and ran after him towards a long brick building with a large great S painted above the door. The warden, Tom discovered, was the caretaker of the local school. He and several other men had been elected to be wardens by the people in the area. He sat down by Tom. "You know dogs ain't allowed in shelters, sir." Tom stood up to leave, but the warden touched him gently on the arm. "I think we can overlook that, though." He gazed at Tom, puzzled. "Where you from, then? You look like a countryman." "I am," he answered. "I've come looking for a boy what stayed with me, like. Evacuee he was." The warden looked astounded. "I think you'd best head back home. We've hundreds of the blighters running away. We send them back. Makes no difference. They just come running back again. You're the first person I've met who's come looking for one." A young girl peered cautiously over the edge of one of the hammocks that was slung from the ceiling. The warden caught her eye, and she lay back quickly and disappeared from sight. "That's one," he said, indicating her swinging sleeping quarters. 15 times she's run back here. She says she'd rather be at home, even if bombs do drop here, than be miserable and safe in the country." "He didn't run away," said Tom. "Oh? No. I had a letter from his mother saying she was ill, like, and could he come back for a while to help out. I ain't heard nothing since." "How long's he been gone?" "Near a month." "How long was he with you?" "Near 6 months." "6 months?" Tom nodded. "And he didn't run away?" "No. He was happy." The warden rubbed his chin with his fingers and sighed. "Look here," he said, "there's nothing you can do, I don't think. Could be when he got home he forgot about you. Perhaps. It's just that I'd like to see that the boy's well. Then I can rest peaceful like." "Blimey, I never met anyone who cared that much for them. I hear such stories about you country folk, not nice uns neither. No offence," he added, "but I can see some of you are a kind-hearted lot. And," he went on, raising his voice, "some people, Helen Ford and brothers, is downright ungrateful." The hammocks jiggled violently at this last remark. "Maybe I can help you find this boy. What was your name now, mister?" "Oakley. Tom Oakley." "Well, Mr. Oakley, you say he's from this area?" Tom nodded and brought out the piece of paper from his pocket. The warden glanced briefly at it and looked up startled. "Why, it's in this very road. I know number 12. Willie Beach." "That the boy?" Tom's heart leapt. "You seen him then?" "Not since last September. Saw a large party from the school leave for the station. That's the last I saw of him. Quiet boy. Didn't mix. No friends as such. Bullied and ragged a lot by the kids. Sitting target, really. Sickly looking boy. His mother thinks she's a cut above everyone. Don't fit in here at all. Never have. Over-religious type. Bible thumping. You know what I mean." Tom nodded. "Still, it's part of me job to check who's here and who's not here in case of bombing, and having to identify, and I ain't been notified of him being back. I ain't seen much of her either." He glanced across the crowded shelter and waved to someone at the far end of it. "Glad might know something." "Glad?" he yelled. "Glad?" A fat woman, who was sitting playing cards, looked up. She smiled, exposing 3 teeth in a large expanse of grinning gums. "Yes, love," she whispered. "What is it?" "Is Mrs. Beach on night shift this week? She ain't here." "Is she ever?" "What you want to know for?" "Man here looking for little Willie." "Run away, has he?" "Didn't think he had it in him." "No. Man says Mrs. Beach wrote for him to come home." At this, Glad climbed over several sleeping bodies and lumbered towards them. "What you on about? She told me he was staying. Said he was wicked and for being sent to an home for bad boys." "Boy was never bad with me, that I can vouch for," said Tom. "Who are you then, sir?" Glad asked. "Tom Oakley. Willie stayed with him for nearly 6 months. Glad shrugged. "I ain't seen him since September." "What about Mrs. Beach?" began Tom. "She keeps herself to herself. Bit of a madam. Thinks she's a bleeding saint, if you'll excuse my language. She does night shifts, so I don't never see her. I live next door, you see. Mind you," she whispered, "I don't half hear some funny noises. Very funny." "How do you mean?" queried the warden. "Bumps and whimpers." "Bumps?" "Yeah, like furniture being moved around." "What's funny about that?" "At 3 in the bleeding morning? That's what's funny. She's probably dusting her Bible." The warden turned wearily. "Looks like a dead end, don't it, Mr. Oakley?" "I'd still like to see where he lives," said Tom. "You come with me, love," said Glad. "You fond of that Willie, then?" Tom nodded. "Queer that. You're the first person I know who is. I don't think his own mother is even fond of him." "Maybe she'll see me." "Oh, blimey, I forgot. She's gone away. To the coast, for a Bible meeting or something. She told me last week. Dunno why. She don't usually condescend to even look at me." "Why weren't I informed?" commented the warden. "It's up to her, ain't it?" The warden gave a despairing sigh. "Do you still want to see the place, Mr. Oakley?" He nodded. They had to wait a good 2 hours before they could leave. The small building grew foggy with tobacco smoke. A WVS lady in green uniform visited them with tea and sticky buns, and a man called Jack unclipped a rather battered accordion and started playing it. The small group that Glad was part of were in the middle of singing "We're going to hang out the washing on the Siegfried line" when the all clear was sounded, and they left it unfinished in their scramble to get out. Tom was relieved to be outside again. His clothes smelt of stale tobacco and sweat. He breathed in the night air as if it was nectar. Glad was waiting for him. Together she and the warden accompanied him to Willie's home. "She fancies herself duffer, Mrs. Beach," lisped Glad. "She's got the downstairs and the upstairs room. She sometimes rents her bedroom and sleeps downstairs. Well, so she saith," and she winked and gave Tom a nudge. They stood outside number 12 and peered in at the window. One of the newspapers had slid to one side. The interior seemed dark and uninhabited. The window still had brown sticky tape on it to protect the room from the blast of falling glass. "Deserted," remarked the warden. Meanwhile, Tom's attention was drawn to Sammy, who had started to move in an agitated manner outside the window. "What's up, boy?" he asked. "What's up, boy?" he asked. "You smell something?" He crouched down and stroked him. "What is it?" Sammy began to whine and scratch frantically at the front door. He ran to Tom, and clinging to his trouser leg, he pulled him towards it. "No one in there, Rover?" said the warden. "Maybe," said Tom, "but it ain't like him to fuss over nothing." He jiggled the doorknob. "You can't do that, sir. That's against the law." "I think there's someone in there," said Tom urgently. A policeman who had been attracted by the commotion joined them. "This man reckons there might be someone in there," explained the warden. "I've looked inside far as I can, and it looks empty to me." The policeman pushed back his tin helmet. "What evidence do you have, sir?" Tom pointed to Sammy, who had grown quite frantic. He began to bark loudly, still scratching feverishly at the locked door. They all glanced at each other. "I'd like to enter," suggested the warden anxiously. I'm worried about the mother and boy who live in there." They knocked on the door loudly, but there was no answer. Sammy leapt up and hurled himself at it. "It can smell something by all accounts," said the policeman. After much deliberation, they decided to break the door down. Between them, Tom, the policeman, and the warden broke the wood round the lock after only 2 attempts. The door crashed open, and they were greeted with a stench so vile as to almost set them reeling. It was as if an animal had died and was rotten somewhere. Sammy ran immediately to a tiny door below the stairway and barked loudly, scrabbling at it with his paws. The odour was at its strongest there. The warden lifted aside the latch and swung the door open. The smell was rank, so much so that the warden turned his face away quickly for a moment as if to retch. The policeman pulled his torch out of his pocket and shone it into the hole.